Thing about being a maker and a creative, it's a great way to express something without using words.
Welcome to Make and Decorate, a podcast for makers who love to sew, quilt, and decorate. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Make and Decorate podcast. This is episode 45 of season 2, originally aired on March 5th, 2020. Okay, so we said goodbye to another month. Goodbye, February, and hello, March. So for me, February ended with a crazy, stressful week. My sister had her baby, and the baby was early. There were some other complications, being breech and other things. So we were on pins and needles, but everything worked out, and the baby was born very healthy. And now they're back home, and all is well. And so that was really a blessing, and we are just all so happy and relieved that everything went well. So during the same week, I was going through my own little medical scare, and ultimately what happened was I've been having this really severe pain in my lower left leg, my calf, and it's on the left side. I went to the doctor. She didn't think it was a blood clot, but then, wasn't sure. So we did an ultrasound, and thank goodness, no blood clots. But I was really worried, and that's something that you really shouldn't mess around with. And, if you have the insurance, don't hesitate, because lately it just seems like I have been hearing of so many people just going, like, as a friend of a person that works at a showroom that I go to, her brother-in-law passed away suddenly from a heart attack, and he ignored the pain. I mean, people try to just like push through pain, and when it's something that you really shouldn't push through it. And like for me, just talk about my own experience. This is pain that I've never had before, and it's something, and it felt different. And when you know your own body, and you kind of know when something is just not normal or not right, those are signals. And so when you have those signals, really get it checked out, because it could mean the manner of life and death. So anyway, that's my little just soapbox thing for this week. But thank goodness all is well with my leg and no blood clots. I just kind of have to get through whatever this pain is, which I think it is from when I fell on New Year's Day. So I think because it kind of extends up to my lower back. So it's just something that I'm going to have to kind of keep working on and figuring out. But anyway, so even though it was pretty stressful, the end of the week ended up very well for everyone. And what a relief. It was just so much a relief. And then, the weather got nice, sunny. Leap day was great. I know it just seemed like another every day, but it was kind of fun. Like a lot of companies did leap day sales, and some of them did like 29% off, which is pretty significant. And I spent the time in my sewing room, enjoying this extra day. I made a pair of little baby pants for my nephew, who's about 7 months old, and they were pretty easy. And that was just kind of like an impulse make. That was nowhere near on my to-do list for projects to do, but it was a really quick little project, and I had a lot of fun with it. And it was because of an email I got from Spoonflower. So Spoonflower sent an email, and there was a baby bonnet. So my little baby niece was just born, and I thought, oh my gosh, this would be so cute for her. And she's tiny, she's smaller than normal. I think she was about 5 pounds. So a newborn bonnet probably might fit her for a little bit longer than it would, newborns that are a little bit bigger, and they grow so fast. So you want them to be able to use it for a little bit of time. So anyway, the bonnet looks so cute, and they teamed up with a pattern designer. The company is called Oh Me, Oh My Sewing. So they did 15% off of her pattern for this baby bonnet and 15% off of ordering fabric from Spoonflower for making the bonnet from their cotton collection called the Petal Collection. So I did it. I actually did. They have a thing on Spoonflower that you can order. What is it called? It's I don't know, but I forget what it's called, but basically you can break up a yard of fabric and you can have different patterns and prints printed in these different sections of that yard. So you could, I did it horizontally split. Half a yard above was one pattern, and then the second half of the yard below was a different pattern. You could have done quadrants of it. You could do patchwork size. So you can make a faux patchwork piece of fabric. It's pretty interesting. So I can't wait to get that fabric and get started on that bonnet. Okay, it just popped back into my head. It's called Fill a Yard. So when you go to order the fabric, there's an option. They ask you, do you want to fill a yard? And you say yes. And then you can pick through whatever fabric patterns you'd like. So when I went to purchase the bonnet, then I started looking. There's so many cute little patterns for babies and kids at this website. So I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And that's when I saw these cute little knit pants, baby pants, so cute. And there's only like 3 pattern pieces. It's really cute. I made it in a day. And I posted it on my Instagram. I'll try to put it in my show notes as well. But I made most of it on the serger, basically the entire thing on my serger except for the waistband. Then I went over to my sewing machine and did the stretch stitch to make the casing for the elastic waistband. And then we were done. So one thing I want to say about this. So if you happen to go and find this pattern for the baby pants, the yardage says a half a yard for the size that I needed. I made the 12 to 18 month size. So I just kind of, glanced at it and, made a note, half a yard. Perfect. Great. Went to the fabric store, got this fabric. And a lot of times I always get more than the yardage needed. But I started to collect like extra fabric that you had leftover, but not enough to make anything else. So it ended up being like a waste of fabric left over. So then I started to really let me just get what I need, what this pattern calls for. Okay, so it worked for the one fabric, and I was able to make those pants no problem because the pattern was a non-directional. And meaning that it was a Mickey Mouse pattern. So the Mickey Mouse was on the fabric, all different directions. So there's no upside, there's no down, right side or, upside or downside. The second fabric I got was the Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. Such a cute fabric. And that one was directional. And on a half yard of fabric, it's only going the short way. So even though the fabric was like 52 inches wide, the 18 inches wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for the pattern piece. So I was really disappointed. And, I pre-washed the fabric too, so it shrunk 1.5 inches. So I just want to put this out here because in case you go and you try this pattern out, don't make the mistake that I did. because then I'm looking at this and I really just didn't want to make these pants with the pattern sideways. It just would look ridiculous. So then I thought, okay, I will cut the width in half and sew a seam, and there'll be like a little seam in there. No problem. I did that, and then there was still not enough for both of the pant pieces. So that one went into the scrap heap. It was just rubbish and disappointed. So I only have the one pair made. But anyway, so I think that it would be best if you got 3/4 of a yard at least to account for shrinkage, and if your fabric is a directional pattern, then you'll have no problem. So another reason I'm kind of excited about coming into the month of March is that, well, first of all, let's put a reminder out there. It's my birthday month. My birthday is the 25th, in case anybody is interested. And I have a P.O. box. So if you want to just send me like a postcard for happy birthday, that would totally make my day, my month, my everything. So just, send out a little postcard to P.O. Box 6904, River Forest, Illinois, 60305. And I'll get it. So just tossing it out there, because I know sometimes I've sent postcards to some people that I like to watch and listen to, and I think it's fun. The other thing is, on the weekend, on the 8th, Sunday, daylight savings time begins. And this is where we get back that extra hour of light back into our days. So instead of the sun setting at, 6 o'clock, it'll set at 7 o'clock now this month, which is fun. It's really nice. And honestly, I mean, we've been gaining daylight every day since December 21st. Now the sun's been setting at almost 6 o'clock, and even that I'm good with. I just love that little extra daylight, and but it's even going to get better. So it feels like when the light extends into the evening, that you just capture so much more of the day. It's weird. And the darkness does kind of sort of like tell yourself, your mind and your body that, you're sleepy, you're tired, it's time to go to bed. And it's only like 8:30. So, and then when you're like in the height of summer and it's 8:30, you're just like, oh, it's so early. I have so much to do. So yeah, that's exciting. And then in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from the day that this airs, it'll be the first day of spring. So lots going on this month. I love the start of spring, and I don't know what's going to happen with our weather here, but this week has been very spring-like in Chicago. We're having some really mild temperatures and, dare I say, warm. But for us, if the temperature is 47 degrees out, which it was yesterday, it was warm. Like, it was nice. And with the sun being out, it just really feels like spring is coming. So I don't want to jinx it, but I really, really hope that spring comes on time for us this year, because last year it didn't. And last year winter went in. Winter just kept going on through May. It was a very late planting season, and I really just felt like I didn't even have a spring last year. So let's hope that spring starts early. Also, what happened over the weekend is I'm on the Alison Glass email list, and up popped an email in my inbox, and it was about a new sew-along starting. And you know that I have said at the beginning of the year that I was not going to, join another sew-along. This year, I was going to finish that trinket sew-along that I did of Alison Glass last year. And I still intend to do that. I've pulled the box out. It's all, the project has everything in this like basket box that I need. Very easy to just pick up and, continue with. So here I see another sew along, and I'm like, oh man. And I've been able to avoid and not get sucked into any other sew along so far. And there are a lot going on out there. There's a lot of quilt alongs, sew alongs, all of that happening. And I'm just pretty weak when it comes to Alison Glass. And then she has teamed up with Giuce, and we're using his pattern. So I signed up for this, guys. I signed up for it. It starts on March 22nd. So if you're interested, go to alisonglass.com. I think you could also go to the Giucy website because his patterns are being used in this sew along, and they are the mini block. It's called a mini block series. So these are really like teeny tiny blocks, 4-inch square. And I've seen these blocks. I follow Giuce, and I think they're beautiful. I've always kind of wanted to give it a try. It's kind of like on my list. And then here we go. Here's a perfect opportunity to try it. And especially it's a lot more fun when a whole bunch of other people are doing this and making these the same time you are. So I did it. I caved and I signed up. And what I hope that I accomplished this year that I didn't last year is completing this sew along. They have really good incentives and prizes to keep you on track. There's a lot of sponsors, and they give out these, weekly prizes when you post your pictures of your block that you've completed. And then if you complete the sew along at the finish date on time, they send you this cute little pin, a finisher pin. So I want to get that this year. I hope I can do it. I'm really, really going to try. But, these are little 4-inch square blocks. And of course, I think, I should definitely be able to get these done on time. And there's 8 of them. So the sew along goes through, I think, to the end of May. And there are 8 blocks total. But I think it's not fooling me because I know it's pretty deceiving because these blocks are pretty intricate. And I have never really worked with this tiny of pieces before. In fact, I love my add a quarter ruler for foundation paper piecing, and these are foundation paper pieced blocks. So in their instructions, he recommended that you get add an 1/8 ruler, which I didn't even know existed. So I definitely, that's probably the only thing that I need to invest in for this sew along, other than purchasing the patterns. But I definitely will get that add an 1/8 ruler because I know it'll make my life so much easier and the process of making these so much more fun. So check it out. And if you are going to join this sew along, let me know because we can help each other out and cheer each other on to keep it going and to hopefully complete this on time. All right, so today's guest is a fellow podcaster, Vicki Holloway. Vicki's podcast is called My Creative Corner 3. She does more of a solo style of a podcast, and I think it's really fun to listen to her podcast and learn about, she talks about her life in her northern town, and she talks about quilting. She's a long arm quilter, and she also does a lot of other different crafts, which is also what I do. So it's a lot of fun. We had a great time chatting, and I hope you enjoy. So here we go. Okay, everyone, you get two podcasters in one show today because my guest is Vicki Holloway, and her podcast, which I listen to, is My Creative Corner 3. Hi, Vicki.
Hello, how are you today?
Oh, very good. Good. Thank you. And thanks for being on my show. I like having other podcasters on the show so we can help support each other. And, I've had several others on too, so it's been fun.
It sure is. It's not like we get to talk to other podcasters very often. People look at me and go, podcast? What's that?
Yeah. I know. It's weird because podcasting has exploded so much in the last few years, but there are still a ton of people out there that have no idea what it is.
Absolutely. And occasionally I speak at quilt guilds, and I still get a whole bunch of people, and they are my age, who look at me and are like, you can listen to quilting podcasts? Where? And I'm like, everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah. A lot of education.
So, I wanted to start by just talking about you and just your quilting and your craft story, where it all began.
Well, it all began as a child. I think a lot of people who are creative makers, I wouldn't classify myself necessarily as an artist, but as a creative. It starts in childhood, and I had really supportive parents, and they really encouraged us to create. But you got to remember, we didn't have cable TV. We didn't have more than pawing on the Atari system, the great outdoors, and I was very, very sickly as a child. So I stayed inside and I made a lot of things, and that progressed to music lessons. And so I've been creative my whole life. Now, I started quilting with my mom in the 70s. It was during that bicentennial era, and quilting was making a resurgence. And I decided, that then everyone kept saying quilting and crocheting and knitting and tatting were becoming lost arts. And I'm like, what? I know lots of people who knit and crochet, but tatting is something my grandparents did, my grandmothers, great-grandmothers. And it's a lace making with a shuttle. And I decided I wanted to learn all the lost arts so that they wouldn't be lost, so I could help other people. I was probably, 12 at the time. I thought, that's kind of a weird thought for a 12-year-old by today's standards, but I had a real interest in making things back then. I was also into classical music. I played violin for a long time. And so, yeah, I did a lot of that. So during that bicentennial era, my mother and I made quilts for all the new nephews that were being born into the family. And we didn't quilt them, because we didn't have a sewing machine that could handle that. And we used polyester double knit fabric to make those just plain squares attached together, and they were made out of all kinds of different fabrics, and we tied them with yarn. And I have one of those quilts still, and it washes up great and could still be used today.
Oh, I love that.
It looks just like you did it.
Yeah, I had one of those quilts. My grandmother made me one back in probably the late 70s when I was a little kid, and she did the yarn tie, and the front of it was made out of all this kind of double knit polyester, but she did a Sunbonnet Sue pattern because she knew that I loved Holly Hobby at that time. So I thought it was a Holly Hobby quilt. I did not know it was a Sunbonnet Sue until I grew up.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had so much fun making them. And then it kind of took a back seat. Adolescence came on. I was really into music. I played in, several groups. But then when did I start making my own quilts? Well, like most people, I got pregnant, and my husband and I, we lived very far away from home. And I decided to reconnect with the tradition that I had a quilt, a baby quilt from my great grandmother. We made quilts for my cousins. And I wanted to make a quilt for my babies. And it's super funny is that I met somebody in college who was my grandmother's age, the little community college, and she did her English paper on American quilts, and she was sharing it with people. So I
Wow.
went over there. I'm like, I really want to learn how to quilt. Can you give me some suggestions on where I could go? I didn't know that you went to a quilt shop or that people gave lessons. So she took me in, actually gave me private lessons, and that's how I made my first baby quilt. And it was a ridiculous pattern. She looked at me and said, "Girl, you have," she was from Texas, and she goes, "You have some very ambitious ideas." And it was a double wedding ring. I wanted to make a double wedding ring for a baby quilt. I made a 4-ring double wedding ring. And after 4 rings, I looked at her and I said, "I think that's about baby size." So that's how I started quilting. But all the other crafts I learned along the way too.
Mhm.
I did all kinds of, little crafts at home. We would go to the library because we didn't have, much other types of, entertainment. And they had a big craft section at our library. So I would check out the books and make all the crafts. I remember one year, I was probably 8. I made an angel band. So it's all for Christmas, all little angels. They were made out of construction paper, toothpicks, and felt arms, and they all had a different instrument. I mean, I took all summer, I think, to make that. It was a long project. Had lots of fun, lots and lots
Oh,
of fun.
yeah, that's so cool. So, I didn't know that quilting has been in your life for so long. And it's really cool because it's so the opposite of, my quilting story, and I didn't discover it until my mid to late 30s. Although I did sew a long time before that, but just regular sewing, not quilting.
Yep.
Hmm.
No, I didn't either. I took sewing in school at 4-H after school. It's
Mm.
for agricultural communities. 4-H is a big thing where you could learn how to raise a sheep, you could can and make different kinds of pickles, or you could learn how to sew. And I learned how to sew on a secondhand sewing machine. And in fact, I was thinking the other day, I didn't buy my own brand new sewing machine until I was 50. I
Really?
always had secondhand sewing machine. And I thought, when I turned 50, I was like, I want a really good sewing machine. So I bought the Janome that I have now. I
Oh,
really like
good.
it.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I heard of 4-H, and it's not. I'm. You must be more in the rural um, areas growing up, and where you're at now, right?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
it's very rural. I lived in the thumb of Michigan, which is a big agricultural area.
Okay.
And yeah, so people would learn, my sister took cake decorating, and, the boys a lot of times were going into farming. So they would do farming related things. Girls would usually raise lambs and calves. And of course, you have to write a book and a story and keep records of all of that and turn it in. So it was a big structured learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of reminded me of college. You keep
Mm-hmm.
learning things and writing about it and documenting it, and then you turn it in at the end. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was very,
Yeah,
very
that's
fun.
interesting. That's very cool. I kind of wish that there was something like that for when I grew up. But I mean, I was in a major metropolitan city area, and I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and I'm still like right next to the city now. I'm in a city, but just outside the
Mhm.
Chicago city limits. So it's very urban, and
Yes.
yeah, it's different. Since I've started quilting and I've been able to meet other people who do it, because before didn't know one soul that would sew like I did or quilt. So once you start doing it and you go to the quilt shops and then you start joining some groups and then you realize, oh my gosh, there are people near me that also like to do the same thing.
Mhm. Oh yeah, it's one of those things that it's a small community here. So you would think that I know everybody who quilts because it's very small. I live in rural northern Michigan now, not the UP, but about an hour south. And I'm still meeting new people who've quilted their whole lives, but all my coworkers. They go, "You quilt? I quilt. We quilt." Yes, we all compare blocks of the month
Oh,
and
wow.
do all kinds of things. And we meet once a month, and it's people who have most of them are retired now from where I currently work, but we still get together, and that's our monthly meeting. The guild, I haven't joined formally because they usually meet at times that are really hard for me. So it's more
Mm-hmm.
a circle of, and we
Yeah,
do challenges, mostly getting together and socializing and catching up on everybody's life. And it's a lot of fun.
that is fun.
It
Yeah.
out actually, because I would sit and sew in my house all the time if I got away with it.
Me too. I'm kind of a homebody, and I when I listen to your podcast, you do say that you talk about life in your northern town, and you so from Chicago, I don't know how many hours north that would be, like maybe 5 or 6.
It's 6. Yeah,
6.
between
Yeah.
6 and 7,
Okay.
depending on traffic around, between Gary, Indiana, and
Yeah.
but yeah, we're 6 hours north, and
Hmm.
I'm right on the 45th parallel. That's our
Right.
claim to fame. We're
Yes.
found on the 45th parallel. I always thought that was hilarious as a kid. Who cares about the 45th parallel? Until I realized we are unique halfway between the equator and the North Pole.
Oh, yeah.
But we also are in a snow belt area. So yeah, we're right on the money for average snowfall. We are at the news said this morning we are at 78 inches of snow for the winter, and we average 140.
Wow.
So we usually get a lot
You get a
now
lot of
and
snow.
we
Yeah.
do, but yes, I don't live in Nova Scotia. They got blasted, and I want to say anybody who lives there who listens to this podcast, I
Oh,
saw the
yeah. I
videos.
saw it too. St.
That will
John's, right?
complain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will
Hmm.
not complain about the 10 inches of snow we got this weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, we live in a small area. It's real tourist oriented, and so the quilt shop that's right next to my house, they have a lot of things going on because they get a lot of people that come and go, but they also do a good job at building a community of local people, especially in the winter. So it's a fun place to live. It's very beautiful, and it's one of those things that we do tourism pretty well. If you like to ski and snowmobile in the winter, come on up. If you like to fish and hunt and camp, we do that too. And I just like to go out and look at the elk and all the beautiful things of nature. So
Hmm.
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I do just go occasionally. I really like going to the museums in Chicago. I find them very inspiring, and
Oh, good.
I miss that. I know because we live 4 hours north of Detroit and
Hmm.
about 4 hours north of Grand Rapids, which have some beautiful museums. So I have to plan a whole weekend if I
Hmm.
want to run in and see a special.
Yeah.
So that gets to be a pain sometimes because if I lived closer, it'd be cool. I could just run in and look at it. But when you live up north, it's a whole
Yeah.
weekend.
Well, or you have the issue that I do where I'm only 8 miles from there, and you
Yeah.
just never take the time to do tourist stuff or the museums. I did do it before when I was downtown more, but
Hmm.
they have done this construction project, um, and it's like right in the center. They call it the interchange, and it's been going
Oh,
on for they were supposed to be done in 2 years, and
yeah.
it's going to be another 3 years. It's insane. It's like
Wow.
it's as if they were building this from scratch, like we've never had a highway there before or something.
Right. Oh my
So
gosh.
it
Yeah.
is
So
such a
until
pain to get downtown. Yeah.
oh yeah. Yeah, that would not be I will avoid that for a couple more years.
Right,
Thanks for the
right.
information.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I did I'm on the mailing list for the Art Institute, and I think there's a Monet coming up soon, which I love. The Monet exhibit. I went to one in '95 at the Art Institute, and it was my favorite. There was so many Monet paintings on that because it was a touring one. It's not like they're
Right.
permanent, so that was really cool.
Exactly.
Hmm. So, all right, let's talk about then. So you've been quilting and sewing most of your life, and you enjoy being creative. What led you to want to do your podcast?
Well, it was a way for me to reach out and find even more people who enjoy making things and creating things. And I had been listening to people like Pam and oh my gosh, I
Hip
can't,
to
I'm
be
drawing
a
a blank in her
square.
podcast. Yes, her and Francis on Off Kilter Quilt. I've been
Francis.
listening to them for a long time. And all of a sudden one day, Francis, I think on her podcast said something like, it would be really great if we had more homegrown podcasters because it had taken a dive. It did. Because there was a time where you could listen to lots and lots of people. And I thought, my kids are grown up now. It was at a time when they were all leaving home. I have two children and they moved out. And I was like, this would be a great challenge for this person who is not fantastic with computers and not fantastic with technology to learn how to do something that would reach out to other people. And I love talking about quilting especially, and all of the ups and downs of the journey. No matter how many years you have been quilting, there's always ups and downs in learning and the process and coming up with ideas and challenges and things like that. And I find as I'm getting older, I'm finding my body is giving me some challenges about quilting because there's some physical things about it that can be a challenge. But that's what really prompted me. It actually was Frances on her podcast saying
I know
that.
exactly the episode you're talking about because I heard the same episode and I had already been thinking about starting a podcast. I mean, it took me 4 years until I actually finally launched an episode. But like 4 years beforehand, I bought the microphone. I got, did all these tutorials, but I was still too scared. And when Frances said that, I was like, okay, I don't have to be uber professional, like perfect everything. I can just start.
So you want to know how I started? And you probably can tell when on the first episodes. I asked my son, who is very computer oriented, and I said, how do you start recording yourself for a podcast? He goes, you got a smartphone? I recorded until I want to say the first year and a half on my cell phone.
Wow.
And he how to download a microphone application that you could have an equalizer and how to upload it. And I learned I still use a free program on the internet. And he told me what to use, but I figured it out myself because about that time he was going to college. But he goes, Mom, you don't need to have a booth. You don't need to have all that fancy stuff. He goes, it's great if you do, but you got to start somewhere. And I thought, where did this kid learn all this stuff? He's so smart. And then my husband goes, something right. You have to start somewhere and start with where you're at, because it takes a while to figure out how to do a podcast.
Yes, it
and
does.
what your voice is and how you want to do it. I'm kind of stream of consciousness type of podcaster, and I have ideas of what we're going to talk about. We as the community listens. What's the subject? What insights have I learned this week? A little bit what's going on in my little town and my little tiny corner of the world, and other people might be able to relate to it because most of us don't. We have a small slice of the world and we just want to try to connect. And I think that's really I just got bitten by that podcasting bug after I did the first one. I'm like, I really like this. And I was hoping that 10 people would listen to it. 100 listened to it. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe 100 people listen to this on my recording on myself.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's great. If your son had not given you that advice, do you think you would have ever started it, or it would have taken you a little longer?
I'm one of these people that once I did make a decision, I usually do it, and I thought, in the back of my mind, I thought I'll give this, 12 episodes or maybe 24. That would be a year, and we'll see how it goes. I probably would have bought a microphone, but it probably would have sounded worse than how it was when I started. But he encouraged me saying, Mom, I know lots of people who record right on their phone. And I'm like, seriously? And it was an encouragement to start with what I had, with the money that I had.
Sure.
And I've slowly upgraded. And he's got a lot more experience in sound engineering. And so that's how he got me the setup that I have now. He bought it for me for Christmas.
Great. Oh, nice.
Very nice.
That's good to have that kind of technology expert in your family.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So it's called My Creative Corner 3, and I always wondered, what's the 3?
Well, I have to say, it's the name of the first blog that I had.
Okay.
And My Creative Corner was already taken. So was 1 and 2. So I went with Creative Corner 3. I kept going, I should really come up with a better story, like 3.
Like you had 3 kids. I thought maybe you have 3 kids, or
the 3 grandparents of of my life who were very, very influential. There were 3. There actually were 4. But I couldn't come up with a better idea. So I said, you know what? I might as well just tell the truth. 1 and 2 were taken.
Yeah.
So I went with 3. And then as I migrated, because I think I started out on MSN. They had a blogging server. They don't even do that anymore. Then I went to Blogspot, and now I'm on WordPress, and I just kept the name because I thought, well, at least that's one consistent thing,
right.
is the name. So
that's true.
With the 3 it's 1 and 2 were already taken.
That was hard for me trying to come up with a name because I wanted something cool. Like, you hear these fun, cool names like the purple elephant or I don't know. It's just something cool like that. Everything was taken.
I know. And I kept thinking, well, I wanted it to be like my creative corner of the world. And then I thought, that's too long. Who's going to type in all of that? I already have the longest email in the universe because I wrote it before smartphones, and it's one of those things where I'm like, it's my creative corner. It's just my little corner. It's my little corner of the house, my corner of the world. But yeah, the 3 is too funny because I'm like, it could be some deep, meaningful thing. No, it's not.
Well, that's funny. I'm glad I finally found out because I'm always curious about that. So I get to actually talk to you and find out. So here's another thing. It's funny because I love listening to your show because we have a lot of similarities, but then we also have a lot of polar opposites. But one of our similarities is that we both love football.
Football, yes, and Super Bowl is in the future here. I'm so excited.
I know, me too.
Football.
I don't meet a lot of quilters and creatives that enjoy football as much as you and I do.
I know. I have found that out. I mean, they were wanting to do a quilt retreat, and one of the dates they picked was Super Bowl weekend. I'm like, Are you kidding me? You can't do a quilt retreat on Super Bowl weekend. So they moved it to April.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know. So true. But yeah, I just wanted to tell you that because it's like there's another person in the quilting world that actually likes football.
Yes.
Is your team Detroit then? I can't remember.
Yes. Unfortunately, it is the Lions. We had a terrible season this year.
So did the Bears.
Also yes, they didn't. And now we're hoping. We were hoping Green Bay would make it, but they didn't make it to the big game.
Oh my goodness! I would never hope that Green Bay made it.
I lived in Wisconsin for several years, and I actually got to see the Packers play. Not at Lambeau, but they used to do other ones. So I have to say, if the Lions aren't playing, I will go for the Packers. And
that makes sense
them.
Since you live there. But they are the arch enemy of the Chicago Bears. So
I know they certainly are.
But I have been to a game at Lambeau Field when they played against the Bears. My husband's family lives. They're all in Wisconsin, most of them. And
Uh-huh.
the one up there is actually a shareholder for the Green Bay Packers, and they got their wedding gift to us was the tickets to that game. So
Yes. It'd be
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, it was an
Oh my
interesting experience. It was freezing. It was like, towards the end of
God. Yeah.
December. Oh my gosh.
Unfortunately, that is the one thing about football is that unless you can go into a dome, which, the Lions play in a dome, but yeah, yeah, but I have, 100 layers to put on for high
Hmm.
school football and college football. But the older I get, the more I realize I'm not as tough as I used to be and sitting
Oh,
outside
you got that
in the
right.
weather.
I'm telling you, we went to a Bears game and it was only the end of September, but it was raining and it was the
Oh, the
wind,
worst.
and it's right by the lake, so you get that lake
Yeah.
wind. And I'm
Oh,
like, I would have much better time sitting in front of the TV in my comfortable house watching and actually seeing the plays.
instant replay
Yeah.
and having all my snacks right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So I'm kind of getting the same way. It's funny because when you're young, the weather doesn't bother you at all.
Yeah. Oh,
And
and, and,
now,
and
ugh,
you're half a mile from the bathroom.
yeah.
That's the other.
Right? Oh my gosh. So, okay, we're going to get back to quilting and craft stories because I might
That
be dropping listeners right now. No, just kidding.
it might be.
Right? So, what types of quilting do you most enjoy? Like piecing, foundation paper piecing, English paper piecing, or do you like to try them
Well,
all?
in just learning, I kind of do have done it all
Mm-hmm.
over the 25, 30 years I've done it. I have to say, I super enjoy making a paper piece little blocks, like the 6 inches
Mm.
in that size. My dream is one day to do a Dear Jane in a real
Me
modern
too.
contemporary creation.
Me too.
Yes, I want to do one so bad. And there's another one called the Nearly Insane quilt that
Huh.
is, I think a lady is from Wisconsin, from the Midwest, and I have that book. I bought it years ago, and it's tiny little pieced, and I don't have the name of the author of it, but it's called the Nearly Insane quilt.
I'll write that down.
And so those are two that are on my bucket list. They're small. I would do it paper pieced. Applique is kind of my nemesis, and that's what's stopped me on Dear Jane because
Oh.
I have did some Dear Janes for friends on my long arm and customers, and there's quite a bit of applique.
Mm-hmm.
But the electric quilt had a program at one time. I need to hurry up and probably buy it, where it's an add-on that helps you just print off the paper piecing. So I have to say that's my first love. I love, love, love paper piecing. But the other part is I absolutely love free motion quilting on my long arm. I hated domestic quilting. It's like wrestling a huge animal under this little machine. And it hurt my neck too much and my shoulders and all of that business. I hand quilted for years. And between playing a stringed instrument and all that hand quilting and handwork, there just comes a point where my fingers anyway, couldn't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned how to free motion quilt when we got the long arm. I never learned how to use a pantograph. I never learned how to do, I have rulers, but I don't like using them that much. So I really like doing free motion quilting also.
I like
I
free
tried,
motion. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I try to do a little bit of free motion quilting every day. It took off over Christmas just because I needed a little bit of a break. And I feel like I gotta kind of learn my skills again. But I jumped right on this morning and it's like, wow, I didn't forget. It's amazing. It's lots of fun. Lots and lots of fun. So yeah, paper piecing, and I do like improv piecing, but I have to be in that creative mind space for it
Yeah.
because there's a lot of decisions that you have to make when you're doing improv piecing. And sometimes I just don't have the mental mind space to do it.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think all of us like to have those projects where it's just more for the cathartic feeling, Um,
And I think the thing about being a maker and a creative, it's a great way to express something without using words. I, in particular, particularly like to not put words in my quilts because I'm trying to find a way to express it in a nonverbal way, because that's really what most art and creativeness is. You're trying to get people to feel something through what they see. But then there are some times where I just need to follow a pattern, and I need to just make what is in the pattern and what the designer made. I occasionally will participate in blocks of the month where all the fabric is picked because I just need a simple, I got to do something, but I don't have the brain space to design it myself and pick 1,000 fabrics.
Right. And it's also nice to sometimes have projects that are a quick finish too, because you get that satisfaction of, yes, it's done. I accomplished. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel really good about myself. And I did when I learn something, I pick a ridiculous project.
Me too.
Like the double wedding ring baby quilt. So I learned how to paper piece doing a 6-inch square. It was like 122 blocks called the Civil War Diary quilt. This is back in the early 2000s. Okay. And I didn't know the first thing about paper piecing. I didn't know anybody who paper pieced. I watched a million videos, printed it off on my computer, and made 122 blocks. Wow. And I was like, it took me over a year to do it, just the blocks. And I thought, you just repeat it every day 122 times, you'll master it by the end. And I thought I'm either going to love it or I'm going to hate it. And I wound up absolutely loving it.
Oh, wow. So you're almost pretty much self-taught with the foundation paper piecing, which is pretty amazing.
Yes, I'm pretty much self-taught on most things in quilting. And, YouTube is to me is like the biggest miracle of technology. Yes. I feel like I'm being taught something by an expert, but I don't have to take a class, and I can't, most of the time in the winter, I can't go anywhere anyway. So it's fantastic. I pursue things and learn things. And I'm pretty much self-taught on most things. If you take a class from me ever, it makes the quilt shop owner absolutely insane, but I cut my fabric, quote, wrong. I use the mat board to measure because I'm left-handed, and my brain, and so I taught all the new students how to use the mat board. If you use the same mat board every time, your blocks are going to be the same size. And I just use the ruler just as a straight edge to cut. Okay. Oh my gosh. Doing that and one of my quilting friends, she looked at me and she said, "How did you learn that way?" And I go, well, when you're self-taught, sometimes you do things in an eccentric manner, but you know what? It doesn't matter. My blocks all turn out to be 12.5 inches or 6.5, whatever. But yeah, I thought the owner was going to lose her mind when she saw me teaching people how to cut fabric.
There's so many ways to do the same thing, but for a long time, I think that there was a certain way to do quilting, and I didn't start quilting until 2010, and really quilting until 2013. Like actually, I took a class in 2010. Beginner, and it was we only learned how to make the top, but the teacher did teach that other method that your quilt shop person was, where you first of all, she told us, hold up your fabric and slide it because you have to get the grain straight.
Yep.
I mean, so I actually do still do that today, like not all the time, but when I kind of notice that the grain is sort of skewed, I'll do that. But we did learn how to measure with the ruler and not use the mat for the thing, but I don't always do it that way. I mean, it's just how I feel. And I have a feeling that, modern quilters don't do it that way either. So
no, I mean, if you're just doing improv, you just need a straight edge.
Right.
Yeah. I did one class a long time ago, in the 80s when I was first learning how, and we used templates. So it was all you cutting your templates out and then, the very traditional way. And I decided that was like incredible amount of work and that there had to be a better way. So when the rotary cutter came into my life, that was like, wow. I thought, again, another miracle of technology. I
Right,
thought it was
right.
amazing.
Yeah. And what about, you mentioned your long arm. So how long have you been long arm quilting?
About 10 years.
Oh, wow.
My mom actually bought the machine. She was planning on retiring. And my mom used to live 3 houses away from me. And so she had a big studio, and she bought it for herself, but also maybe to have a retirement job.
Hmm.
She absolutely did not enjoy long arming
Oh,
for other
wow.
people. She found that to be really hard. And then she also, has some vision problems. So she got really self-conscious about, working on customer quilts.
Okay.
So she retired, and they moved south. They live outside of Lansing now, and that's 3 hours away. And they downsized to a really small house with no studio space.
Mm,
So the long arm came to live with me. And
nice.
she still comes up north, and then we'll do quilt camp, and she'll do her quilts, and we'll have a little time. And it's a good time to get together, because my mom started quilting um, again when the road, probably the late 80s, early 90s. And
Okay.
we quilted together for a
Yeah.
lots of years. And we lived in this little town and did a lot of things together. So I miss that part since she
Mhm.
retired, but I have to, I'll be okay with it because they don't get the snow. And that was the big thing. They
Yeah.
don't get the snow where they live like we do.
Right.
And so the long arm stayed with me. And the
Nice.
funny part is it takes up a lot of space. Long arm,
Oh,
I have
yes.
I don't know, a 10-foot frame. It's a baby lock, so it's more of a mid arm. It's not fantastically huge, but it's great for
Hmm.
free motion quilting. It's only got a stitch regulator, no computers. We just got a basic model,
Hmm.
and it's at the foot of my bed
Hmm.
upstairs in my bedroom. It's the only room in the house that's big enough outside of my
Wherever you can
dining.
fit it.
It works, and it's not in the main living space. So
Right,
I have
right.
it was 10 years old, and I have to say it's in fantastic shape.
Hmm.
So it was a good investment, and
Good.
it has had very little repairs, knock on wood,
Yeah.
and I really love it. I really,
Is
really
the
love
machine, is that more of a mechanical or is it computerized?
it. It has the computerized part for stitch regulation,
Oh, okay.
but there's no computer for me to program it to say I would like star flakes,
Right.
stars and
Right.
snowflakes and footballs all over this quilt.
Right.
It,
Yeah.
and there's a shelf, where if I wanted to, I could learn how to do pantographs, but
Hmm.
I don't really want to learn how to do that. I'd have more
Hmm.
fun. It's more fun doing free motion quilting.
Yeah.
So it's very cool. So
I
it
can.
has some computerization, like
Okay.
your sewing machines have,
Yeah.
but not any robotics to it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, which is, I mean, I think they probably kind of have a little bit longer life because the more mechanical they are, the longer they live.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
doing really well.
Cool. That's great. I one day I will have a long arm machine. I really can't wait. I told my husband that's the next
It's
machine I need to
it's
get.
fantastic because
Yes.
if you're like me, I like to start things, and I like to do every part of the process,
Hmm.
even binding, even though
Yeah.
it's not my favorite thing,
Hmm.
because I'm not very good at it. But I like to do it all myself,
Hmm.
and the free motion quilting was great. I have paid by check to have long armors do larger quilts for me, and it didn't feel like mine. And that's,
Hmm.
okay. Some people, that's not the thing. They don't enjoy the long arming part, but I do.
Hmm.
And in fact, quilting is what kept me going. I love the actual quilting stitches
Okay.
way more than the piecing part.
Hmm.
When I was younger, I vowed I was never going to piece again after after many problems. And part of it is when you have secondhand machines. I didn't have a
Yeah.
machine that was good, but it wasn't my favorite part. I didn't start loving piecing until the probably 2000, in the early 2000s, and then paper piecing. I was like, yes, this is what I
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. So, um, the going back to the long arm quilting. So I agree with you. I like the quilting part. I like all the parts, but even machine quilting at my domestic and free motion is my favorite. Even though I'm not like, the best at it, I still enjoy doing it. And I practice a little bit before I do the quilt. I should do that little everyday thing that you do where you just do 15 minutes, because
Yeah.
you could get really, really good by spending that little bit of time every day, because
Yep.
just the
You don't ever,
improvement, that I
yeah.
get from practicing one day before I actually do the real deal is
Yep.
amazing.
Well, that's why I loaded my quilt on after a 6-week break. I loaded one of my quilts on versus a customer quilt, and I'm like, this is going to be a warm up. But part of it is I learned that from music lessons as a kid. If you do something every day, you will make a huge amount of progress on it. Versus if I sat down and only tried to, free motion quilt every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
You would be relearning it all the time. And I'll be honest, if I only spend 15 minutes a day, I actually will spend more time and get more done in a week than I would say if I tried to power a 4-hour day of making crafts, because I wouldn't get as much done. I get tired and I get uninspired, in that big session. So I find that to work. I do the same with piecing. Like, I really messed up a block earlier because I haven't used a square up ruler in months. And I couldn't remember how to use a square up ruler. I'm like, why is this not working? Because I actually cut the block the wrong size. That's why. And, it's just like those skills. If you don't use them all the time, it's amazing how fast you forget and need a refresher.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So, all right, just a few more topics and then we'll let you go. But there's so much more that you do, and you mentioned some teaching. So you do teach like beginning quilting and other types of quilting. So how did that come about? And do you plan on keeping on teaching like in person, or what other?
I do. I like in-person teaching, and it's one of those things that as long as there is an opportunity, I would do it. I enjoy it. This year I probably haven't taught a class since last fall, but our quilt shop has lots of time and she loves having local people teach. I think teaching is kind of the natural progression of once you learn something and you figure out how to do something and you actually feel like you're actually kind of above being a beginner and you're an intermediate and you want everybody else to learn this wonderful thing too. And I like talking about it. I like teaching classes. I tried a couple different types of classes. Like I've done an improv class and beginner class and working on, workshops and things like that, so it's I enjoy it. I really, really enjoy meeting people, and
nice.
Some people don't take to it. I've had one person go, "This is crazy. Why would anybody cut this stuff up?" She came to 2 classes of a series of 6 and then never came back. But it wasn't her thing, and that's okay. But then there's 2 or 3 other people in the class who were like bitten by the bug within one block. You could say, you better join the Quilt Guild because you are going to love this. And so it's great to see the spark in people's eye.
Oh,
like,
good.
I can do this.
That's the fulfilling part of it then, to see, other people take to it and learn from what you've learned. And
try to teach them from making mistakes, even though I might teach them how to cut fabric
on a mat.
eccentric way.
Well, you also you make patterns too, and you've been published in Make Modern magazine, right?
I have. I once in a while I will write patterns, and it's one of those things where I'm not sure that I would want it to be a full-time job, because pattern writing is a skill set that requires a lot of patience and writing and thinking like a technical person. And so it takes me a long time to write a pattern. But yeah, I've come up with some ideas that I thought were pretty interesting and kind of different and an unusual way to assemble this particular block. And so I've had probably half a dozen patterns printed over the years, and it's been lots and lots of fun. I also like writing articles about quilting. Make Modern was very kind, and they've published 2 articles that I've written in addition. Way back, my first magazine was Quilting Magazine, and I went to Chicago, and Mary Fonz I was on Quilty. You remember that online?
You were on Quilty? Oh, I watched that.
It was awesome.
I must have seen you before I knew who you were. Oh.
It was so, I thought I was going to keel over, but
you made it.
Of course, then I had a hair day. But it's so much fun to for magazines, and I had a good time with that.
That is so cool. You were on an episode of Quilty with Mary Fonz. That's awesome. I went to that quilt shop a little bit before it closed down, and that's where she filmed the episodes. Did you film there in that little tiny narrow quilt shop?
It was actually in the person who filmed it was her sister's boyfriend, and it was in his apartment. Okay. It was a very unique experience because you actually went to somebody's house, and then you had to walk through the one room row house to the back where they had a studio. It was lots and lots of.
That's so cool.
It was super cool.
Yeah, I really love her a lot. All right. So I wanted to also thank you for you. In September, you had your podcast anniversary. Was it 3? Is it 3 years podcasting?
It was my 3 year. This is going into the 4th. I started in 2016, and Make Modern has been a very good friend of me and supporting the show. And so we were able to give away an edition of their digital magazine.
Yes, I downloaded it.
It was super fun. Yeah. It was lots and lots of fun.
Well, thank you, and Make Modern, because I thought that was a great surprise and gift and everything. So you've got something else going on before you go. One quick thing though.
Sure.
In the spring, summertime, you go outdoors and you like to garden, and you got me interested in fairy gardens. I had really, yes. Yeah. I've never really I don't know where I've been, but I'm like, fairy garden. What is that?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, I think, has its roots in England. I think because they have small little porches, and fairies are very much part of, the folklore in England, Ireland, and Scotland. And so I have a small yard. It's pretty good size compared to some urban areas, but it's not big enough to have a fantastically huge garden. And so I have some of my grandmother's cuttings from their old heirloom flowers. And then we put raised flower beds in, and we couldn't grow a tomato for anything. And so I converted it all into what I wanted at the beginning, and that's miniatures. I love miniatures. And so I put miniature plants and have my little fairy gardens, and I try to make it Lord of the Rings. Kind of looks like the tiger.
Yes,
it is. So I absolutely love fairy gardens. I'm trying, and I actually have a couple inside too, in like terrariums and things like that. So it's super fun, and it lets you be a kid again.
Right. Yeah. You got me interested, and then I started, of course, the YouTube thing. So I typed in fairy gardens, and I saw all these tutorials and things, and even Blueprint had a little class or whatever highlight on it. So I'm gonna try to. I made something, but of course I gave it away. So this year I'm gonna make a little fairy garden for me to keep.
Yeah. My sister is fantastic. She has more of the artistic mind. And so she uses like teapots and recycles and upcycles and sculpts her own mountains and all that stuff. So I may have to commission some work from her.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's highly creative because you are putting together like a miniature world
Yes.
And it's like, it can be magical and everything. So I love it. Very cool. All right. So let's promote because you've got something coming up soon, right? A premium podcast?
I do. This is the first time I will be doing a premium podcast because I enjoy the audio format so much that I want to stay in that. And I do a lot of teaching. And so it's going to be about Zen and creating. And so the working title currently is Zen and the Art of Creating. And why it's kind of jumping off that article I told you I wrote for Make Modern last year. It was, why is quilting good for us? And I did a lot of research on actually the brain structure and how it helps us. And I also do a lot of anti-anxiety teaching in my job. And I thought it's all about creating and being calm and finding that center in our brain where we are at our best in what we call a flow state as creatives, where you're not overthinking it. The ideas are just coming. And so that's what this premium podcast is going to be about. It's going to be about why it's good for us, how to capture those moments. I want to do some stress management talk and do all kinds of different things. And it's probably going to be several, I want to say 2 hours, but break it up, with timestamps on it and make it so people could do segments at a time and work on some exercises and relaxing. And because I'll be honest, when I first started quilting, it wasn't super relaxing. No. I got real uptight. And I was like, this is supposed to be a relaxing hobby. Why is this so hard? And so I'm breaking it down in the podcast to helping people find that relaxing part. It takes some practice. It takes some time and how to be meditative about it.
Well, that's very interesting. I really like that. And it's so true because at the beginning of quilting, and especially for those of us like me who are like perfectionists, and there were a lot of tears. And yes, then when I tried to learn machine quilting, my shoulders were up to my ears.
Yeah. Yeah, the first independent quilt I ever made, I threw it in the trash. I threw the top in the trash because it wasn't perfect. And then the next day, it was kind of like the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. I pulled it out and go, it's not so bad. Maybe I'll finish it.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so when is that coming up? Or do you want me to put a link in the show notes?
I'm looking at mid-February.
Oh, okay. That's coming up.
So this podcast will be up. And once I get that ready to roll, I'll send you a link.
Okay.
And that'd be something that maybe potentially we could put that in the show notes. That'd be awesome.
Is this going to be something that is available for people to download anytime? Or is it just like this is when it's being published and... This is the first time I've done it, but according to all the directions, it looks like once it will be up forever. And then once you purchase it, you'll be able to download it whenever. Oh, great. Okay. So then we could put it, because this is going to publish after you release it.
Exactly.
A few weeks or so after you release it. So then we can still have the link and people can still have access to it.
Absolutely.
Okay,
that'll
good.
Be fantastic.
Yay. Well, Vicki, thank you so much for coming on to my show. And it's just been great to talk with you. And, I listen to probably all the same shows you do too, because I hear you mention Kristen Esser sometimes on your show. So I listen to her podcast as well and everything. So it's just nice to be able to talk to each other and share the same love that we like to send out into the world.
Absolutely. And, the quilting community really is universal, and you meet so many people through podcasting. It's just incredible. And I appreciate you having me on the show. I had a wonderful time, and I so enjoy listening to your podcast as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks so much to Vicki for coming onto my show. And I will put links to her podcast page and to her Etsy shop if you would like to purchase and download her premium podcast. I actually purchased it, and she has a couple of extras that you can download. There's a PDF file, and then there's an additional short audio file that is really interesting, and it's a short audio that just gives you some exercises, some breathing exercises, and something that you can listen to whenever you're feeling like you just need to, get the weight of the world off your shoulders and kind of like, return yourself to just a calm, relaxed state. So I'll put those links in the show notes, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and thank you so much for listening. I will be back in 2 weeks with another great episode for you, and my guest will be Brett Lewis, a new fabric designer with Northcott Fabrics. Until next time, stay quilty and creative, my friends. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Make and Decorate podcast. The podcast is produced, recorded, and edited by Stephanie Socha. Until next time, have a great day. Bye.